The Ninth Circuit is affirming a decision of the lower court that the Trump administration ICE officials cannot detain people for speaking Spanish, for their jobs, or for essentially being a brown person. I know that should not come as a shock to us Americans who've been following 200 years of democracy. The Trump administration is very upset by this and appealing it to the Supreme Court.
It is very disappointing that in the year 2025, we had to have two courts so far tell this administration, you legally cannot engage in racial profiling while you're trying to find people to deport. And yeah, you're right. You know, if they don't look white, you can't stop them just for that. You can't stop them for speaking another language. You can't stop them. The court had to spell this out too. If they have an accent, you know, maybe they speak English, but they've obviously got a different accent. That's not probable cause either. And we're seeing this happen more and more, including a lot of the people that are stopped. And I've seen so many videos of this. I see them every day where you'll have, you know, a family in some instances or individuals that say, look, I'm an American citizen, but obviously I'm of Hispanic descent, you know, a couple generations ago, but I was stopped in California. I was stopped in New Mexico and I was interrogated. And most of these people are, you know, astute enough to get their phone out and record these interactions so that we can see that, sure, the courts may have said they can't do this, but it's still happening, I would say, almost every day at this point.
And I want to be clear, not to be too nerdy on a point, they don't need probable cause. They just need reasonable suspicion, which is the lowest standard in the government. That is which means just reasonably suspicious of something. And they are basing it off of, you know, you're brown, you're doing landscaping, you have an accent, and the court said, no, you can't, that's not enough. You have to have a little bit more than that. This is the bare minimum, this is the floor, and they're screaming to the Supreme Court to say, but we should be allowed to. And then they also say in here, which I found interesting, is that the 3,000 a day arrests that Stephen Miller and those guys have pushed forward is not a quota, it's just a target, a goal, because quotas are illegal. And so they're playing word games. It's not really a quota, and you can't point to any documents that we said it was a quota, but we all know he said it. We all know that they did it, and we know why they want it, because most of the administration now has stock options in these for-profit immigration detention facilities. It is disgusting, it is racist, and it is a money-making scheme by the greatest grifters this country has ever seen.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the fact, too, that the court ruling said you can't target these people because they're working specific jobs, because that's another thing we have seen a lot of. We have seen people actively in the middle of doing landscaping specifically just snatched up by these masked thugs, sometimes with no identifying markers on them at all. These people think they're being kidnapped, and their lawn equipment is just left out there. I mean, that's how quickly they do jump out, snatch these people up. And it's because, wait a minute, that's a landscaper, not a white landscaper? Yeah, we can totally deport this guy. That is profiling. I mean, absolutely textbook profiling. And the courts, you know, they're doing what they're supposed to do. Unfortunately, this administration is still not listening.
Well, not only is it not listening, but the courts are by design slower than the political outrage that can go as fast as a certain orange person can tweet. You know, the courts take a while you have hearings you have to do, but this is moving pretty fast for the American court system. I mean, this has already got to the appellate level, so the next step would be the Supreme Court. But we've also seen images of immigrants running across fields because they're targeting these places, construction sites, areas where they think immigrants would be most likely to be, and just rounding up people. And we're seeing more and more reports of American citizens being detained for days in these roundups.
If this makes it to the Supreme Court, which, as you said, you know, that's the next step, do you have any faith in this court to not allow them to do this?
At this point, I can't say that I do.